Hi, everybody. So, welcome to today's event hosted by All About Law and Irwin Mitchell. We're really excited to spend the next hour with you. And before I hand it over to the firm, I would like to just ask that you please turn on your cameras as it makes a great first impression. There might be some time for questions at the end of the event. So, if you do have a question, just raise your virtual hand by clicking the reactions on the bottom toolbar and clicking raise hand. If you have any issues throughout, please send me a private message and I'll do my best to try and help you solve the issue. So without further ado, I'd like to hand it over to our speakers here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Agni. So welcome everybody. Thank you very much for joining us virtually this evening. My name is Natalie White. I'm one of our early careers managers at Irwin Mitchell. Usually I'm based in the Manchester office, but as you can see, and as you'll probably see from most of our speakers this evening, we are working from home, and you'll get to hear about all of that this evening. So today we're going to focus on our London office. So you'll hear from speakers who are working in our London office and hear about what it's like to be a colleague there, how we support our trainees, and also get to hear a trainee case study as well in terms of the work that our trainees get involved in. So in terms of agenda, it's going to be split into two sessions. So the first part will be 5 till 6 o'clock, and we're going to do a presentation which is going to have a number of elements to it. So firstly, there'll be a bit of a welcome presentation and an introduction to the firm by myself. If you don't already know anything about us, hopefully that will provide that insight to you. We're then going to move on to a session which will be led by our early career regional representatives. I'm not going to steal their thunder on what they are, but they're going to talk about what their role is to support our trainees and also to talk and share with you the seats that we have available in our London office. We're then going to move on to our trainees, who are going to lead a session focusing on colleagues. So what's their experiences of being a colleague in the London office, and they'll also include our commitment to the community as well. And then finally, we'll come back a whole big circle back to me and finish on careers. And that will be an overview of our recruitment process for our training contracts. And as I said, finally from 6 till 7 p.m, once we finish our presentation, we are going to open it for networking or question and answers. So we will break out into a number of rooms, which we'll explain at the end of the presentation, where you can network with our colleagues and ask any questions that you may have. So we really hope this evening will give you an insight into Irwin Mitchell and our London office, and hopefully inspire you to consider a training contract with us. So firstly, we'll get started on an introduction to the firm and who we are. So we have over 3,000 colleagues in total based across 15 UK offices. And you can see on screen on the map, we have 11 offices that are highlighted where we do recruit trainee solicitors. Typically at one stage every year, we'll have around 100 trainees on programme with us across our 11 offices. The firm was established in 1912 and we're now the second largest litigator in the UK, ranking number 1 for overall client service by Legal 500, and that's out of the top 25 UK law firms. But besides that, what we're also really proud of is our culture and what we do to continue to support our local communities. So we've raised over 2 million charitable donations through the firm's registered charity, IMCF, as you can see on screen, and we continue to support local communities with our Office Charity of the Year initiative. And you're going to find out some more from our trainees as to what that charity is in London and how our trainees get involved. Now, we are a UK law firm, but we do have an international presence, and that's through as members of First Law International, which is a Brussels-based global network of over 85 independent national law firms. We also represent clients across 200 countries, and that's through our best friend network of high-quality trusted partnerships. So whilst we are only offices in the UK, we do have that international presence. We're really proud to be a number 1 super brand in the legal sector, and we are official legal partners to the England rugby team and the British rowing team as well. This one's really important for me and probably for the listeners this evening. When you're choosing your training contract, it's really important to look at what firms are doing. Are you continuing to grow? And at Irwin Mitchell, we've had an 11th consecutive year of growth, with revenue, as you can see, for 2021 totaling 276 million. And as a result of that, we have supported over 1 million clients since we were formed in 2012. And that's as a result of us being a full service law firm, which essentially means that whatever our clients need in terms of services, we can help them. And finally, something I'm really proud of, particularly in our team in early careers, we are proud to be ranked 78th in the Times Top 100 for graduate employers. And we also ranked our highest place this year of 5th place in the law firms of choice to work for. So hopefully from what you'll hear this evening will also inspire you to consider us. So in terms of our structure and how we operate, we have gone through a recent restructure in the business, and we now operate from what we call our client service areas. And our client service areas are essentially our legal and operations engine, and they deliver outstanding legal services to clients, and we also provide some business and operational services to our colleagues. Our trainee solicitors sit within our client service areas, which is split into the 7 teams that you can see on screen. The reason that we have our client service areas is to allow us to provide a more streamlined and collaborative approach for our clients. Often a client can come to us and their issues can be intertwined, and ultimately our breadth of expertise lets us see the big picture and allows us to support them in the correct way. So, as an example, if a client comes to us to support the conveyancing for their new home, we can also help them update their will. If a client's business has gone through a merger, we can also help them review their employment contracts. So it's that kind of holistic service that clients essentially would have to shop around for with smaller firms, and we can provide this all under one roof, which essentially means for clients saving them time and money. And the reason this is important for you listening this evening is that when you're choosing the firm for your training contract, it's important to consider what opportunities are available for trainees. So as a full service law firm, we have a wide range of seats available for you to train in. And you'll hear about this evening from our regional reps as to what seats are available specifically in the London office. So I'm going to now hand over to Marcos and to Tom to talk to you about their role and the particular seats in London.
Thanks, Natalie. Natalie, can I just check that you can hear me okay?
We have a little bit of interference, Marcos. We can hear you slightly, but with a bit of a robot voice.
Yes, I'm getting the same from my side. Tom, are you and then I'll lead on.
Yes, you want me to carry on, Marcus?
Yeah, I'll do my bit, the kind of sketchy audio. Not quite sure what's going on. But if you want to introduce yourself, Tom, I'll go after you.
Great, good. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming along. My name's Tom Goff. I'm a senior associate in the medical agents team and one of the early career regional reps for the London office. I've been at Irwin Mitchell for 4.5 years. I qualified in a different firm and then I came a clinic firm and joined Irwin Mitchell 4.5 years ago, coming into the MedNeg team. Marcus?
Thanks, Tom. I'll try my best. So if you can't really make out what I'm saying, do stop me. I'm Mark Leftery. I'm a senior associate, and my journey into ended. I started as a paralegal way back in around 2006. I worked in the team, as it was called back then. I worked in that team applying for a training contract. I secured the trainee in our Sheffield office for 2 years. before into the London office in our medical negligence team. It's fair to say I'm quite well travelled around the Irwin Mitchell offices. I'm going to pause for a second, really Paul. I might ask you, Tom, to pick up my section. Apologies.
That's fine, no problem. Yes,
Can
so
you hear me okay?
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you, Marcus. So Marcus and I work as early career regional reps. At Irwin Mitchell, we try to make sure that every trainee is supported fully, whatever department you're in, and across all your seats. There's a huge support network from trainees, both locally and nationally, both with trainees in sort of second years or more advanced seats, and also for the early careers regional representation sort of system that we run. The idea behind it really, what we want to do is to basically there is the touchstone for any trainees at any point in their training contract. Whether you've got concerns about or questions about your seat allocation or the process for supervision or how to develop your career and sort of the opportunities for doing so, life within the firm and sort of what is available for you as far as support is concerned. We hold lots of we help host events for future trainees for the office. We'll meet with you to discuss seat choices and training contracts. We work closely with the national team for the early careers to sort of feedback and to liaise with national leads on any issues for training contracts that need to be dealt with, or any issues or problems that come up. So we at Irwin Mitchell, we have a very big focus on well-being. It's been something that even since I've been here, I've really seen the firm develop very, very well. It's obviously a stressful job. It's a big career, but it's got to be a career that's going to work for you and work through throughout your life. And that's something that Irwin Mitchell really do focus on. And look, through my role and through Marcus's role and the national careers partners, that's something that we will make sure that you get the most out of training contracts, both professionally but personally as well. Can you pass on to the next slide, Natalie? Great. Okay. So as Natalie alluded to, we've got many different service areas. We really try to be a full service firm for all of our clients. We have a very good culture of client sharing and cross-referring clients to different departments. There's obviously some departments where you will, that doesn't apply to, but generally speaking, we have a very good sort of collaborative approach with all of our teams and departments within the firm. If you could pass on to the next slide, please, Natalie. Thank you. So up here is the trainee seats that you have for options. During a contract, you'll have 3 training seats and 1 qualification seat. The qualification seat will be your final seat, and the idea with that seat is that's the department that you will qualify into. Most of the departments and areas of law are available within those different seats. The positions or the areas of law highlighted in grey there are areas where we don't accept training positions, simply because the type of work that's involved and the experience needed. But going through those heads, those different elements, we have commercial, advisory, and disputes. We work with clients to understand and manage risks to businesses and resolve disputes efficiently. As it says there, that works with employment, litigation, pensions, and the regulatory investigations group within commercial advisory. Next up is probably one of our larger departments. It's complex personal injury. This includes international serious injury, medical negligence, serious injury, and workplace injury and illness. As we said, this is probably the largest specialist teams in the country. We're a tier 1 firm for many of these areas, League of 500 and Chambers. It's obviously the department that I work in as well. The work you do is incredibly varied and interesting, and often sort of law changing. We had a case last year that went in medical negligence that went to the Supreme Court that changed the rules on fertility claims. International serious injury in the past and recent history have dealt with the Tunisia terrorist attack inquest, which was a large amount of work to cover. And we have serious injury and workplace injury illness as well, which covers large parts of work as well. Serious injury including serious PI, spinal injuries, and so on. Then we move on to corporate and finance. Obviously, there's some crossover with corporate finance and working together with commercial as well. That includes banking and finance, corporate and restructuring and insolvency. The idea is that the services you provide are to help financial and corporate partners grow and develop and hit their strategic objectives. The idea is we try and assist in every stage of a business's life. And as you can see, seats are available on all three sub-teams. Next up is court of protection and public law. Court of protection works for vulnerable individuals where they no longer have mental capacity to make decisions or manage their own finances. The court of protection sisters effectively act as the representative or support for the clients in that process. And we also deal with personal representatives where there's a trust that needs to be set up as well. Within that, you obviously with court of protection, you have lots of cross-working with other teams, whether that's family, private clients, or commercial, sort of complex personal injury as well. We also then have a public law team, which help with human rights cases and challenges against government departments, local councils, hospitals, care homes, health trusts, any public body effectively, and seats available in both those departments. Then you have family law, which covers the full spectrum of family law, having from pre to post-nuptial agreements, to finances, to divorce, to complex family issues and needs. There's a huge range of experience across all family area laws, and we're recognised in Legal 500 and Chambers as one of the leading family law teams in the country. We have a very good relationship across nationally as well with family law team, and the way that the family law seat and department works as well. There's very good collaborative approach and communication and cooperation across the country for family law. In property, we regularly act for investors, homeowners, landlords, leaseholders in a large variety of property-related issues, both in real estate, disputes, residential property, commercial matters as well. As you can see there, construction and planning, environmental aren't included in training contracts, but will be available obviously as you progress on through your career. And then finally, private client services. As it says there, we deal with tax, trusts and estates, wills, trust and estate disputes. Those also deal with probate matters, so wills, estate work. We have myself, with medical negligence, we do quite a lot of work with this team, helping manage people's estates and working with trusts and setting up trust and tax issues. Right, Marcus, do you think there's anything to add in there? I think you're back now and have normal voice, which is nice.
I hope so. Can you hear me okay now?
Lovely, good.
Great. Thanks for that, Tom, and thanks for picking up my section. I think
No
the only kind of closing remarks to make are what happens if you do secure a training contract with Irwin Mitchell, and how that might look in accordance with the business need and what seats you want to go into. So what happens is we discuss your preferences with you if you're successful in securing a training contract, and the firm does of course try to meet any specific requests for certain departments where it can. But the exact number of seats available at any given time is naturally driven by the needs of the business. So our focus in placing trainees is on basically where there's likely to be roles upon qualification. So we're obviously investing in our trainees for the future. And over the last 5 years, we've consistently offered qualification roles to more than 80% of our trainees. And in 2020, our retention was 90%, and 2021 is 93%. So the only other comment I wanted to make was how, as trainees, you ought to keep an open mind about the seats that you do. As I've mentioned at Irwin Mitchell, we do everything we can to accommodate specific requests, but it's not always the case. And I can speak from personal experience. When I was a trainee at the firm, even before I started my training contract, I was always very keen to do a seat in medical negligence. It didn't happen. At the end of each seat, I kept asking the question, and unfortunately, I ended up in a different department each time. But that said, all of these skills I developed in the other departments, particularly those relating to litigation, were naturally kind of transferable to medical negligence. So upon qualification, there was an NQ medical negligence role available, which I applied for and secured. So I suppose the underlying moral to that story is if you don't get exactly the seats that you're aiming for, it's not the end of the world. You might actually end up enjoying one of the other seats more, and it certainly doesn't close the door to qualifying into that seat that you weren't able to get during your training contract. But as I said, the vast majority of requests are accommodated. So Natalie, I think that does it for our section, and I believe we're about to hand over to Alex, Elliot, and Madeline.
Yep, I think that is us now. I'll just check that the other two are with us. Elliot and Alex, are you there?
Yes.
Yep, we're here.
Fab. Hopefully no technical issues, no robot voices this time, but no guarantees. So I will start by introducing myself. So I'm Madeline or Maddie. Either's fine if I meet you later in the training session, networking session. So I am a first year second seat trainee. I was previously in medical negligence in Tom's team, and I am now in serious injury. And I'm 2 months into that seat now. So I think we're about 8 months into our training contract because we started in February 2021. In terms of study, I was at the University of Bristol. I started in 2015 and graduated in 2018. I came out with a solid 2-1, and that was in the LLB. In my third year of university, I started applying for training contracts and vacation schemes, work placements. I got a place on the Irwin Mitchell legal work placement in the summer of 2018. So that was just after I graduated. I did 2 week-long seats. One was in international serious injury and the other was in medical negligence. At the end of the vacation scheme, I approached the partner who had been supervising me in the medical negligence team. I'd been told that her paralegal was leaving, so I asked if I could be considered to take her place because I just graduated and didn't have any plans. So I was just going to live at home with my parents until something came up. So I thought, may as well take the opportunity and ask. Thankfully, she said yes. I was then offered the training contract shortly afterwards. So you do the work placement, or I did it in July. I was offered the training contract in August 2020, in July 2018 to start in August 2020. I started to paralegal in the London team, London medical negligence team in September 2018. I did a year there and then left to start my LPC full time. Unfortunately, in about April 2020, Irwin Mitchell had to make the decision to delay our start date by 6 months due to the pandemic, obviously. I put out a post on LinkedIn explaining my position and asking anyone if they had any interim paralegal jobs that I could have between finishing my LPC in the June and starting my training contract the following February 2021. I was really lucky that the right person saw that, and the head of clinical negligence at another firm asked to see my CV. I was interviewed by her over FaceTime in April 2020, which was really bizarre at the time, but probably not so bizarre now. We're so used to Zoom and FaceTime and things like that. But at the time it felt really odd. Thankfully, I was offered that job. So I worked there for 8 months in total, but was really excited to return to Irwin Mitchell in February. And yeah, I've been here ever since. So I will pass over to Alex, who can explain how she got here.
Hey everyone, can everyone hear me? Just to check. I'm going to assume silence is yes. So I'm Alex. I'm currently in banking. So yeah, started at the same time as Maddie did. So about 2-3 months into my banking seat, and my previous seat was regulatory and criminal. My academic background is I went to uni 2014 to 2017 and studied politics. At the end of my politics degree, decided essentially that I didn't want to get a job, so went on to do the GDL. It was on my GDL year that I applied to training contracts and vacation schemes. So got the vacation scheme with Irwin Mitchell in 2018, same one as Maddie actually, and yeah, did that and was offered the training contract in 2018 to start in August 2020. The same as Maddie, pushed back to February 2021. And I didn't have any legal experience. I didn't have any legal experience when I was applying for the training contract, and didn't have any prior to starting the TC. So it's definitely, and I know a lot of people do have some legal experience before starting, but it certainly isn't a prerequisite to applying or even to starting. Yes, that's all from me. I think I'll hand over to Elliot now.
Thanks, Alex. As you've guessed, yeah, my name's Elliot. I'm also a first year second C trainee in the same cohort as Alex and Maddie. I'm currently in medical negligence. Tom is my supervisor, so hi. I previously sat in the will, trust and estate disputes team, and I'll be sort of going through one of those cases that I dealt with on that in my case study a bit later. I did a LLB at Sheffield University, specifically European and International Law, featuring a year abroad. So my degree was a little bit longer than the standard one. I was there from 2012 until 2016. I decided to go straight into my legal practice course the following year, self-funding with a loan. Again, probably wouldn't recommend that if you don't like being in debt, but there you go. So I finished that in 2017, and when I was coming out of that, I had interviewed a couple of times actually for a paralegal job at Irwin Mitchell. Prior to starting my LPC, they wouldn't have me at the time because I was just about to embark on the LPC. In the meantime, I'd actually applied for the legal helpline, which if you are sort of in that middle period between training contract offer and actually starting, and you have got a bit of space where you're not studying, the legal helpline is a really good way to kind of build some experience as well before you start your training contract, because you're working with all different areas of law. I'd applied for that. I'd actually been accepted for the job, but I had a call from the paralegal, the team that I had applied to be a paralegal in, saying, "Do you still want to come?" I said yes, and so HR probably had a slight panic getting my contract switched over. But I started in the fast track personal injury team up in Sheffield, where I used to live, in 2017. During that period of time, I'd been applying for training contracts pretty much every single year from the penultimate year of my degree, undergraduate, and was unsuccessful pretty much each time apart from the last one. So I am a fifth time lucky candidate. Don't let that put you off. If you aren't successful on one particular occasion, then do reapply and take note of any feedback that you do get, because it is valuable, and ultimately it's giving you all the hints and tips that you need in order to succeed when you actually do get that application in and it is successful. So in fast track personal injury team, I had sort of a lot of responsibility at the time, lots of managing my own caseload from a very early on, with lots of supervision, of course. It was hard work, but it was ultimately really rewarding. And I was assisting other people in the team as well. And I found it helped me gain quite a lot of practical experience that I wasn't sort of, that I didn't quite pick up at undergraduate and even on the LPC, because a lot of the experience you do gather is on the job. So whilst it's not mandatory by any means to have prior legal experience to start a training contract, it can help. So if you have the opportunity to do that, I would encourage it. So yeah, I think Maddie is going to talk a little bit about the firm's culture. I think, is that right? You're on mute.
You'd have thought we'd all have learnt by now to not put ourselves on mute. Yeah, so I will just, first of all, just speak about my experience with the culture of the firm, and then I will go on to cover wellbeing and diversity and inclusion. And then Elliot is going to cover learning and development, supporting the community, and flexible working. My experience of the culture here is that it's a really supportive and welcoming environment. There's not a pecking order of hierarchy. Everyone respects each other. And that goes professionally and personally, in my experience. What I mean by that is professionally, you as a trainee or a paralegal, or even if you were an admin staff, you could approach a partner in any department without having to worry about how they'll react. Everyone's really friendly and approachable. You're treated with respect, and you're seen as a really important cog in the wheel that is Irwin Mitchell, whatever your role. I've certainly found that as a trainee, it's quite easy to feel like you're completely lost at sea and don't really know how to speak to people, particularly senior people, managing partners of offices, things like that. Everyone is exactly the same. Everyone is so friendly, really kind, and always has the time to answer questions if you have them. In terms of respecting everyone personally, what I mean is that this isn't the kind of place that you get a call at 11 p.m. and be expected to jump online and do a massive piece of work. That's just not how we work here. Don't come crying to me in a few years if you end up here and you do get a piece of work that you have to be up all night for. I'm not saying it'll never happen, but it's certainly not the norm. I've never had to do it, and I've been working here on and off for a few years now. Something that has been really important for me has been the introduction of flexible by choice working, which Elliot will speak to you about shortly. It allows you to kind of work your hours around your life instead of working your life around your hours. So I go for a swim twice a week. I tend to be in the office 3 days a week. I'm here now. And the other 2 days a week, I'll be working from home. It's really beneficial for my mental health on the days that I'm working from home to go for a swim at about 3 p.m. because that is when I hit a wall. My brain just stops working for a bit. When I'm in the office, I can get past it normally because I don't know, I guess the pressure of being around people or in a different environment. If I'm at home, I find my eyes shutting. So I can go and jump in my local swimming pool at 3 p.m. I just put it in my diary, and my supervisor knows that I won't be there. And then I come back after an hour, start at 4, and instead of finishing at 5, I'll finish at 6 just to make up that hour that I missed. So that is something that's really helped. I personally have found working from home quite difficult at times. So to be able to have that flexibility from Irwin Mitchell is really helpful, and I think probably makes me a better trainee and a better person to work with. Okay, so that's my experience of the culture, and I'll just give you a quick overview of wellbeing and diversity inclusion. So with wellbeing, the firm is really passionate about the wellbeing of its colleagues. There are loads of initiatives in place. I have always been really impressed by the amount that we have, particularly when I was looking at us in comparison to other law firms. So we have over 100 Healthy Mind advocates who are trained by the Mental First Aid England. Now, they are colleagues. I know there's a few trainees, and it goes all the way up from trainee to partner. And these are people that have in their email signature saying, I'm a Healthy Mind advocate, you can come and speak to me, and you know that these people you can speak to in confidence if you're having any problems, which I think is a really great thing to have, just as reassurance that there are people there for you and people ready to listen in different departments or maybe in your department. The second is that our HR team are trained in suicide prevention, which I think is a really smart initiative. I certainly haven't heard of any other firms doing that. Third, we're members of the Mindful Business and Suicide Prevention Charters, which are online if you did want to have a look at those. And finally, perhaps the most practical one is that we have a wellbeing hub, which has a focus on a holistic approach to wellbeing. So there's loads of advice on there about how to manage your time, what to do if you're feeling overwhelmed. And that's available to all colleagues on our intranet. In addition, something that has been received really well is that in the last couple of years, the firm provides an extra day on top of your annual leave allowance as a wellbeing day to recharge your batteries. You know, they encourage you to do whatever it is that makes you feel rested and restored. So that could be a day sitting and watching TV or going for a run, whatever. But it's a day that is dedicated just to making you feel better and making sure that you're the best that you can be when you're on the job, which is very appreciated. We've just been allocated one, and there's lots of talk about what people are going to do, which is always nice. In terms of diversity and inclusion, the firm is really committed to creating a diverse and really inclusive culture where everyone can flourish. There is a real commitment to constantly improving our diversity, and there are a number of networking groups that celebrate our people. So we have I Am Equal, I Am Powered, which are groups that focus on, so I Am Equal is about gender equality. I Am Powered is, I'm really sorry, I'm having a complete blank, so I'll speak about a different one. I Am Respect focuses on ethnic minorities and making sure that they're represented and feel comfortable in the workforce. So they aim to, you know, support people who need a much stronger voice and raise the awareness of the challenges that those individuals can face in society as a whole. There is a real celebration and recognition of colleagues' identities. A recent initiative has been, as a firm, we are committed to the Halo Code, which champions the right of staff to embrace all Afro hairstyles. Something that is always reported on in the legal press is that our gender pay gap is one of the lowest in our industry, and we are also the UK's #1 law firm for female partners. And from my experience, which has been so far fairly limited to personal injury, there are a lot of female partners here, which I think is really inspirational and just great to see. It's certainly not the norm at other places. We have developed policies that help us attract, support and retain transgender colleagues, and the LGBTQ+ networking group was highly commended by Stonewall. We also have a diversity board, which continues to help shape our diversity and inclusion strategy in a way which means we build an inclusive business for everyone. And finally, we also have nominated trainee reps. We have reps for the wellbeing of the trainees and another one for diversity in each office. So if you ever feel like you have issues that you want to raise as a trainee here, there is a peer that you can speak to, which is brilliant. So I'll now hand over to Elliot to cover the other three on the slide.
Thanks, Maddie. Just a note, I Am Equal is the LGBTQ+ group at Irwin Mitchell. I believe I'm actually one of the contacts for that in the trainee booklet. So if you do have any questions to ask, you can pop an email to me.
Apologies.
No, it's all right. It's fine. There's lots of them. There's
so many.
I know, which is a good thing, of course. Yeah, a lot of the things that Maddie has said regarding the firm's culture, I would pretty much echo. Just to kind of highlight how it works in terms of like the flexible working policy, which I will sort of touch on a little more detail, the ins and outs of that. I'm more of a person who prefers to work from home most of the time, so I tend to come into the office once or twice a week to coincide when my supervisor will be in, because I do like to have that face-to-face supervision when I can, but I appreciate that's not always possible. And if I'm coming into the office and nobody's there, then I'd kind of sometimes prefer to be at home, and having that flexibility is really good as well. Having again the flexible by choice policy, if anybody has tried to get any form of medical appointments during non-work hours, you'll understand how frustrating it will be. A lot of firms before the pandemic, and probably now, probably do still have the policy where any appointments that you have should be made outside working hours. That's no longer the case. If you do need to hop out for a GP or dentist appointment or a counselling appointment, for example, that's absolutely welcomed, and it's encouraged if it is going to sort of further your well-being. So that's something I really do like about the flexible working culture here at Irwin Mitchell, because I can because it means that I can, if I do need to take a little extra time just for myself during the working day, if I've had a difficult case, for example, I've had a difficult conversation, it means I'm not feeling too pressured to continue when I don't feel able and not at my best. The other great thing as well, as I will touch on as well, is the support we do in the community. Considering the pandemic since I joined, I've not had the chance, unfortunately, to get involved with much volunteering stuff at the moment, but there will be opportunities that arise in the coming weeks and months. When I was in my old office in Sheffield, I did a volunteer thing for Roundabout, which is a local homelessness charity there, where I did a sleep out, where I rough slept, fortunately, in a covered barn for a night, which was sponsored. I'll touch a little bit on that when I get to it. So for learning and development, we all have access to our own learning hub. So each team has its own knowledge hub or learning hub, which provides sort of a large number of training courses and webinars which we can use to build our knowledge whilst we work. So the learning process never really stops when you finish your LPC, and it never stops really throughout your entire career at Irwin Mitchell, because there are plenty of diverse training sessions that you can access. We have department checklists in each team as trainees, so that supports us with our learning. It helps us figure out what things we haven't done yet and which things we can maybe do a bit more of, or if we've already done a lot of one job, it means that we can kind of say to whoever's delegating work, I've already done a lot of this, have you got any of this? So I can kind of build as broad a set of skills as you can. You also have a buddy, especially in your first seat as well, when you're just starting out, who will support you from day to day. You'll also have you probably have a buddy in every seat, to be honest, but it's mainly important when you're just starting out as well. You take part in a number of training sessions throughout your training contracts, covering a lot of relevant issues regarding, costs and special damages, which would be relevant to the particular client services area that you're within. And then when you qualify, you get to attend a NQ conference, which I'm sure we're all looking forward to. Might probably will be virtual in this day and age, but I'm sure it'll be just as good. So as for our support in the community, one of our sort of strategies really is to ensure that we're taking care of our clients, our colleagues, and our communities. Communities is a very important sort of pillar of that. We have our own registered charity at Irwin Mitchell, so it's the Irwin Mitchell's Charity Foundation, which is abbreviated to IMCF. So IMCF has made £2 million in charitable donations, and they continue to support local communities with our Office Charity of the Year initiatives. So in London this year, the Office Charity is the Whitechapel Mission, and that is another charity for people affected by homelessness. So the Whitechapel Mission sort of supports those affected by homelessness by providing a day centre, skills training, careers advice, activity programmes, and other specialist support for those with complex needs. And you're not expected to take any sort of extra time out of your work to do it. You are given 2 special volunteering days per year to support your local community, and that doesn't mean you have to use your holiday for that. It means it is a special volunteering day that you can use twice a year for that purpose. And then finally, flexible working, which I think has been a fantastic initiative that we've introduced this year. Before the pandemic, a lot of our colleagues did already work flexibly, and ever since, many more of us have actually done so as a result of the pandemic. People with kids having to sort of deal with homeschooling and things, that was especially useful around that time. So I can't relate personally, I haven't got kids, but that was helpful for people. So simply put, our Flexible by Choice initiative, which is what we launched this year, was that we trust each other to do the right work at the right time and in the right way. So effectively, it's having a choice as to where, when, and how we work, provided that our clients' and businesses' needs are met and our other colleagues' choices are ultimately respected. So that can be working from home all the time, could be working in the office all the time, or it, like most of us, could be taking a hybrid approach. So we do have a system where we can book a desk in the London office, really easy to use, and it means that you can be you don't have to pick a specific desk. You can sit wherever you like in the office, really. They're all sort of socially distanced at the moment, but it's really nice when you do get the chance to go in to see other people, and you can actually see who's booked to go in that day, so you can kind of coordinate it, which I think is quite nice. I think the next bit that we're talking about are the case studies. I think, is it Maddie first that's doing
me
your
again.
case study? All right, I'll let you have the
floor. Thank you. This is the last time you'll hear from me, so I'll try and keep it brief. So my case study relates to when I was a trainee in the medical negligence department. So that was my February to August seat of this year. So I spent a lot of time at university studying the surrogacy laws in the UK and how they compare to those abroad. I just thought it was really interesting. By the way, the UK laws compare badly to other international surrogacy places. To summarise, the laws in the UK mean that the rights of the surrogate are put above those of the biological or intended parent. So, for example, the surrogate could give birth to a child that biologically belongs to someone else, the intended parent, but they can decide not to sign the parental rights over. So pretty problematic, as I'm sure you can imagine. So when I started in the medical negligence team, I was very keen to get involved with a case that my supervisor had recently taken on. The client had suffered from a massive uterine rupture when giving birth to her second child. And that meant that she could no longer bear children, but she always wanted a large family, and this was only her second child. So she wanted to consider claiming for surrogacy costs, specifically international surrogacy, because of the reasons that I set out. She had been through so much trauma from the birth injury and was in a really fragile mental state. So allowing there to be uncertainty in a domestic surrogacy agreement where she didn't know if she was going to get the baby in the end, depends on what the surrogate decides. It was just not something that she could consider. Now, what was incredibly useful was that one of the partners in the London Medical Negligence team, her name is Anne Kavanagh, recently had a case that went to the Supreme Court on the issue of recovering costs for international commercial surrogacy. Now, this case was on the screen, so it was Whittington Hospital versus XX. So Anne was acting on behalf of XX. In essence, XX had a delayed diagnosis of cervical cancer, which meant that she could no longer bear children herself, but there was still the option of using a surrogate. So, different facts. Our client didn't have cervical cancer, but same principle, she still couldn't bear children. XX wanted to pursue surrogacy in another country, and specifically America, where the rights would instead be with her from the moment of conception and not the surrogate. So the other way around to how it is here. There is no risk of in America of the surrogate saying, no, I don't want to give you this child once it's born. The case went to the Supreme Court because the defendant didn't agree with the costs of an international surrogacy arrangement. They didn't think that they should be recoverable. So the defendant, the hospital, didn't think that they should pay for that because you can get surrogacy in the UK and it's much cheaper. However, it was XX's case that these costs should be recoverable. Now, XX won in the Supreme Court, which was amazing news, and has opened the floodgates for more cases and claims. So claims like my supervisor's clients that had the massive uterine rupture. The Supreme Court judgment meant that actually, we could claim for the surrogacy costs abroad and not just those in the UK. So as a result, I was asked to research the XX and Whittington judgment and to consider whether the facts and the judgment would apply to our client in the same way it had to XX. So basically whether a judge would consider that our argument was as solid as XX's, and so we'd get awarded the costs in court. My supervisor and I then had a call with Anne to discuss whether she thought that we had a good enough argument to pursue international surrogacy costs. And Anne, based on her experience, thought that we probably did. So I then went on to draft a letter of advice to the client explaining the law and that we thought there were grounds for her to claim for the international surrogacy costs. Later on, so this was a couple of months later, once the client had time to mull over the advice and think about whether this was something she wanted to pursue, she decided it was. So I had a meeting with the client and I took her witness statement to support claiming for surrogacy costs. This, for me, is a perfect example of why Irwin Mitchell is so brilliant. It's really about getting to work with the best in the industry. You don't get much better than someone who's had a case in the Supreme Court, and to be able to ask her for advice was really exciting, to be honest. It's a massive highlight for me as well, because I'd followed the case in the news from the start. So that is, to date, my best experience. I've had lots of other brilliant experiences, but that one's certainly a standout for me. And I think now passing on to Alex.
Hey everyone. Yes, so as I said previously, I'm currently halfway through my banking seat, and banking and finance is slightly different. So my case study is slightly different. The role of a banking lawyer focuses much less on black letter law in cases than, like, for example, Maddie and Medneg, and is much more commercially minded. And particularly as a trainee, you can almost feel a bit more like a project manager. So yeah, as you can see on the screen, I'm going to tell you about a deal that I worked on, my first deal actually in the banking team, which luckily began when I was about a week into my seat, which was a loan for 40 million to our client, who was the borrower, in order to develop some luxury retirement homes. So as I said, for this matter, there is no relevant law. The job of the lawyers is essentially to get all of the relevant documents negotiated, produced, gathered, and just to get everything signed so we could get our client the funds. So you can see on the PowerPoint, the main tasks that I was responsible for throughout this deal. And one of the really good things about banking is that when I'm doing work, I genuinely feel like I'm needed to progress the transaction. The work that I'm doing, no one else is responsible for. So you do feel like a genuinely valuable member of the team. Yeah, so my first job, the main job I did was managing the CP checklist. So it's essentially a shopping list of all the things that need to be ticked off and approved before the documents can be signed and before the borrower can get the loan. So on this specific deal I'm speaking about, there was 107 things that needed to be checked off, and these ranged from documents that needed to be drafted and agreed, financial documents that the lender wanted to approve. There were documents from property and construction colleagues, as the loan was for the development of property. So a whole range of things to do, and it's your job essentially, number one, just to keep track of all of these documents flying about, and also just to make sure that things are progressing. So you get used quite quickly to sending a lot of chaser emails to various parties. So another key task that I did as part of this deal was being the point of contact for the lender solicitors. And this kind of feeds into the above point, because you're the one managing their CPs. So you do get a really good wide sense of what's going on within the deal and what's progressing well, what do we need to push or negotiate. So as part of this, I attended twice weekly meetings with the lender solicitors just to get and to give updates and make sure the deal was progressing. I'd also touch in with them by, on email several times a day, which was really good. And it does, I'll come on to it later, but things like that do build up your confidence quite quickly when you're the one that's speaking directly to the other side. The next thing that I did quite a lot of, as you can see, is being like a regular point of contact for our client. And you know, to be honest, similar to what I just said for as point of contact for the lenders, solicitors, I personally regularly spoke to the client. I'd be emailed directly by them for updates, and they'd ask me questions. I'd reach out to them to get documents, and you do just get a really genuine sense of responsibility. Very much what I was doing. I wasn't in the background quietly progressing documents. I was speaking to the client. I was someone that the client would come to, and this was, you know, right from the very start of my banking seat. Finally, one of the last main tasks that I did as part of this deal was drafting a lot of the various documents that were needed. And this is a really good experience because it allows you firstly to see what the documents look like and contain, but also how the documents fit into the wider deal, what the purpose of the documents is, and yeah, just essentially what they do. Moving on to what I learned as part of this specific deal, but also more widely in the banking seat. One of the really good things about banking, which I think differs from some of the other seats that you might do throughout your training contract, is you get to see deals run from start to finish. So as I said, this deal kicked off in my first week in the seat. So, you know, the first week of September, and we signed all of the documents on the 15th of October. So it was like a 6-7 week runtime. And that's really nice because you can see the matters that you work on, unless, you know, obviously I'm brought in to an existing deal to provide additional help, which can happen. But generally I'll see things from start to finish. So you do get an overview of the whole transaction. And you know how the part that you're playing fits into each specific bit. You're not like playing catch up with what's already happened, and a lot of the time you know you won't leave and wonder what did happen. You do see things through. Another thing that I learned was drafting skills, which is, you know, a really important skill to have as a solicitor. As I said, I did a lot of drafting, and these documents go, you know, regularly go back and forth with the other side multiple times. And it will get to the point where the amendments that you're making are very minor. So attention to detail is certainly necessary, and a skill you'll develop throughout the seat and throughout your training contract, because you'll start to get a sense of where the common mistakes might be made when you're sending documents back and forth, and you just get a bit quicker at picking things like that up. Finally, in this deal in particular, and in my banking seat, I've had a really high level of client contact, as I said, and these clients in this case study, they are, you know, really important clients at the head of the banking team, and I was very much just let loose on speaking to them directly. If I had any questions or wanted to get an email checked or wanted to check a point, I would speak to the team first and just clarify. But the majority of the time, the team do just give you the trust to be like, you know what's going on, you're managing your work stream, you know the answer, so you be the point of contact, you answer that email, so you're definitely not in the background. The client knows who you are, the other side knows who you are, and they do come to you. Yeah, so I mean, overall banking, I found banking to be a really good seat for getting a good range of skills that'll be helpful in, you know, not just in this seat but throughout my training contract and in my career. And also a good one to do if you want to get an idea of, you know, how businesses work and the finance world. It's just a really good one for that. So I hope that was helpful, and thank you for listening. I think I'm handing over to Elliot now.
Yes, I'm mindful of time, so I'll try and keep this relatively brief. So as I said before, I was a trainee in the Will Trust and Estate Disputes team. So if, you know, like me, you're quite fascinated with what make people tick and sort of family dynamics and things, or if you're a fan of Succession, the popular HVO program, then Will Trust and Estate Disputes is a really interesting seat to do, especially because in London we've got a really diverse practice. You'll be working on such a wide variety of cases on a day-to-day basis that, you know, the old cliche about no 2 days being the same that you do often hear in like a lot of like literature is actually true. It's not just a sort of a buzzword or a buzz phrase. It's because we act for both claimants and defendants in litigated matters. So the key word here is disputes. We're not advising on drafting wills, we're not advising on drafting trusts, and we don't even touch tax. That is the domain of the tax, trust and estates team. What we kind of focus on is when advice given in relation to those things has gone wrong, or if something generally in the will or trust making or trust or will administration process has gone wrong. That's where we would step in and assist. So that could include an Inheritance Act dispute. So that is usually when a person's spouse, for example, does not inherit sufficient assets under their deceased spouse's will, meaning that they can't sort of financially sustain themselves with that. There could be a will validity dispute. So if somebody has lacked testamentary capacity to make a will, or if they've been subject to undue influence, for example, then those are sorts of things that you can deal with. Really interesting stuff, and lots of factual background to really get your teeth into, which I find really, really interesting, and I found very, very interesting during my seat. This case was actually a dispute between some executors of an estate. And it's still ongoing at the moment, so I can't really be overly specific about what's going on, but I was working on this during sort of towards the middle and the end of my previous seat. So in this one, our clients were the daughter and the civil partner of the deceased, and they were seeking to defend a claim brought by the deceased son. So the claimant, the son, had alleged that some of the property in the estate of the deceased, in fact, was his and hadn't belonged to the deceased, or because she'd given it to him during her lifetime or put it into trust during her lifetime. This was obviously, this would have had the effect that the gifts of that property in the deceased will would fail because it wasn't hers to give. Obviously an undesirable result for our clients, who basically said, well, the deceased never said anything of the sort when she was alive that any of these properties belonged to her son. And if she did want that to happen, then she would have made those intentions clear in her will. Obviously, our clients were also due to receive a proportion of the sale proceeds of these properties, so they wanted to defend their entitlement to that part of the estate. So I got involved with this by drafting, or helping to draft, the formal letter of response to the claimant's letter of claim that his solicitors had drafted. And we found, sort of in reviewing that letter of claim and analysing the case that the claimant put forward, there were some aspects of it which were lacking. So we had to be very careful in how we approached it and how we strategized, and only answer the case and criticize the case that was put forward. You've got to be very careful when you're used to acting for a claimant all the time, as I'd done in personal injury previously, where you're always concerned about putting forward a positive case. Sometimes you got to realize you've got to be very careful not to offer them an olive branch and make a better case for them. You've got to only answer the case that they'd made. So I learned quite a lot about sort of strategy in dealing with that, which is good because it was a different perspective of what I'd done before. The other tasks that I was doing on that was reviewing evidence that had been provided by our clients. And if a client's not an expert in this area of law, as many of our clients are not, which is why they instruct us in the first place, they're not necessarily going to have that knowledge of what evidence is firstly relevant and what evidence is going to be the most effective in supporting their defence and supporting their legal case. So we had to review the evidence and figure out what was the best way we could put that evidence forward in our response, to try our best to undermine the case made by the claimant as much as we could. I also got involved by conducting some of my own research into the properties that were in dispute. In particular, I thought, because there'd been some alterations made to the property over the years prior to the deceased's death, I'd have a look at the planning applications for those to see how the deceased referred to the properties in those applications. That was a feature of the dispute, and that was somewhat helpful in sort of building our case. So it was a really good example of the sort of work I was doing sort of on a day-to-day basis in will, trust and estate disputes, or WTED as it's affectionately called by the team. A lot of black letter law, a lot of very meaty legal concepts, which are quite satisfying to learn about and quite interesting to get your head around. I've put a few things in the slide there about proprietary estoppel. I'm sure that's giving some people cold sweats from university. Also common intention constructive trusts, those they still pop up in practice, and a lovely bit of Latin just to round it off for the evening, regarding deathbed gifts, as that was sort of one of the features of the dispute. So yeah, that's kind of covers what I did in my first seat. That was one of my favourite cases that I worked on. I think what I'm going to do now, I think I'm going to pass back over to Natalie, who is going to begin the final session of the evening on the actual application process and the careers bit generally. Over to you.
Thank you, Elliot, and thank you to Maddie and for Alex in terms of those insights into what it's like to be a trainee. Hopefully that's given you some food for thought. So we're going to move on to the final session before we open up for networking, which is around our recruitment process. So in terms of our process, as part of our process, we seek to provide opportunities to those who, as you've seen from our trainees already, have a real passion for the law and want to make a positive difference to not only society, but their future careers as well. So if you are, if your ears are pricking up and you've something that you're really interested this evening, we would really welcome your application as part of our process. Now, we've got two routes for recruitment in which you can apply for a training contract at the firm. We have firstly our legal work placement, or secondly our training contract only route. Now you'll see I've actually put it in the chat, but a large number of our training contracts are offered to those who have previously completed a legal work placement with us. So we do really recommend to apply to that scheme where possible if you can complete a placement. The placement is for 2 weeks in total, and you are paid the national living wage for your time with us. And really, it's not only an opportunity for us to assess you, but for you to assess us as well. It's really important that you determine the right training contract and firm for where you start your career. So the placement, if you join us on the legal work placement, it takes place in your chosen office in June or July. And as I say, that's really designed to give you an insight into the firm, the type of work that we carry out, and the people you could potentially work with. The second route, for those who wish not to complete a placement, or if you're already working and you can't take the time off work, that's absolutely fine. We have what we call our training contract only application. And through that route, you just need to be successful through our recruitment process, which I'm going to detail in a moment, in order for us to make a training contract offer to you. So in terms of the stages of our recruitment process, it's exactly the same regardless of whether you apply through the legal work placement or you apply through training contract only. And it consists of 4 stages in total. So for stage 1, we are open now until the 2nd of January for applications. And the first stage of this process involves a short online form. And that's simply where you'll register on our recruitment system and you'll provide your basic personal information and your academic record. So it really is a very short form. Once you've completed that, we'll then invite you to complete a strengths-based assessment. And this takes about 90 minutes to 2 hours to complete in total. The assessment we've introduced tests you in ways which are relevant to the role, and it provides you with a greater insight into the firm and also what it's like to be a trainee solicitor. Now, the reason we've moved to a strengths-based approach is because this sort of method is designed to understand both what energizes and motivates you, as well as what you do well at. So rather than traditional competency-based assessments, which is obviously based on experience, the strengths-based approach goes beyond those competencies to assess your strengths. So the competency method focuses on what you can do or you have done, and nothing more than that, while the strengths-based approach combines a can-do with what you enjoy doing. So it measures a level of engagement and your natural motivation. So it's just as important as capability in attaining good performance and creating a good fit between you and the role you're applying for. So that is stage 1 of the process. If you are successful through stage 1, we'll invite candidates to complete a strengths-based video interview, and that will be to complete by the 31st of January. When you begin your video interview, you'll have the opportunity to complete a technology check. So you'll have the camera, you can do it as many times as you want. That's obviously to check camera, that we can hear you properly, all the basics around your technology. And then that's followed by a practice question, which isn't assessed. So again, you can do that as many times as you want. That's an opportunity to just feel comfortable with the process. Once you've completed the practice question, you'll then proceed on to the actual official questions, and you have 6 questions in total to complete. For each of the questions, you get around 2 minutes to prepare, and then it will go live with a 2-minute timer to respond for you to give your answer with. Again, as I said, these questions will be strengths-based focused, so they won't focus on your past experiences. They are designed to assess your potential, what motivates you, regardless of what experience you have in those areas or not. So that's stage 2. If you are successful in stage 2, you'll be invited to attend one of our virtual assessment centres. So our assessment centres take place across March and April. And at the assessment centre, we use 3 exercises. We have a group exercise, a written exercise, and an interview with a partner or a senior associate from the firm. As well as completing the exercises, you also get the opportunity to meet with our trainees like Elliot, Maddie, and Alex tonight. And that's an opportunity for you to ask any questions you may have about what it's like to be a trainee at Irwin Mitchell. So moving on to stage 3, if you pass stage 3, it depends on which route you've applied for. So if you've applied for a legal work placement and you're successful at stage 3, you'll be invited to join us on placement in June or July, as I've already discussed. If you've applied through the training contracts only, you'll just complete the final assessment, which is what all candidates will complete. So if you're on placement with us, you'll do the final assessment when you're on placement with us. So that stage takes place across June and July, and then we make our final training contract offers at the end of July. Now, the final stage, just touching upon that stage 4 in terms of the final stage assessment, it consists of 2 exercises. So we have an instruction taking exercise and an interview with our early careers regional representatives. So obviously for London, you'll be meeting with Marcos and Tom. So that's a very quick whistle-stop tour for our recruitment process. But if you want to find out some more tips in our process, we do have a recorded event on our graduate recruitment website, and we go into a lot more detail in each of these stages, and you can find out more as to what that means. So I think we're at the end of the evening. So I hope that the presentation has provided you with a real insight into our London office. As I say, if you're interested, our applications are open now and we close on the 2nd of January. Feel free to attend more of our virtual events like this evening. So we are hosting events up until December and before we close on the 2nd of January. So we're now going to move on to our informal networking session. So what will happen is that we're going to have a room for our early careers regional reps, so Marcos and Tom. We're going to have a room for a number of our trainees, and that's going to be based on seats that they've done. So you'll be able to click on the breakout rooms and nip into each of those and ask further questions. We have also got some other trainees that haven't presented this evening that will be joining as well to answer any questions you have. And then finally myself, I will be in a room. Unfortunately, I have a childcare issue, so I will only be here until 6:30. So if you want to ask me a question, please feel free to drop in before 6:30. Or alternatively, our other speakers will be here until 7 o'clock. So when you join the networking, I would just encourage you can either come on camera and ask us the question live, or you can pop the question in the chat and our speakers will certainly respond to you as fast as we can. So many thanks for the evening. I'll pass over to Agni or to Billy.